On the day the Son of God was nailed to a cross, the entire universe held its breath. It was, without a doubt, the darkest moment for humanity, but also, and this is a little-known secret, the most moving and revealing moment for the angels of heaven. Have you ever wondered what the heavenly hosts, those beings of light and power, truly did when they saw their Creator, the Eternal Word, bleeding and dying for a world that, for the most part, rejected him? This is not just an ancient story. It is like a hidden echo between the lines of Scripture, a whisper where the deep sorrow of heaven came face to face with earth's only hope of salvation. While humans on earth saw just another execution, the angels, and particularly two of their greatest princes, Michael and Uriel, were witnessing the incredible plan of God unfolding in the most unexpected way. What they did, the actions they took in those crucial moments, are rarely told in detail. But you are about to discover a perspective on these events that perhaps you've never considered. A story that will show you the cross not just as a symbol of suffering, but as the epicenter of a cosmic battle and a love that transcends eternity. Golgotha, the place of crucifixion, was filled with a heavy, almost unbreathable atmosphere. While Roman soldiers divided Jesus' garments and religious leaders mocked him, beyond what was visible in the spiritual realm, the heavenly armies watched in overwhelming silence. Among those countless angelic gazes, two figures stood central: Michael, the great archangel known as God's warrior prince, and Uriel, the angel of truth, often associated with the flame of divine wisdom. Michael, usually leading celestial battles, no longer bore the face of a warrior. His eyes reflected deep shock, the shock of a servant watching his king in an incomprehensible state. Uriel, whose very being radiated God's justice, was not prepared for war either. Together with all of heaven's hosts, they were witnessing something that defied their understanding of divine majesty. The Creator of the universe, willingly submitting to suffering at the hands of his own creatures. In that moment, as the drama of the crucifixion unfolded in all its raw intensity, something extraordinary happened in the invisible realm, an act with no celestial precedent. Michael, the mighty archangel, the captain of God's legions, fell to his knees. Not out of weakness, nor because any enemy had subdued him. His act was one of absolute reverence, a spontaneous response to the unfathomable mystery of his Lord's sacrificial love. Beside him, Uriel, the angel whose being was like a flame of divine truth, was also deeply moved. It is said that a tear, a drop of heavenly fire, escaped his eyes, a manifestation of the pure grief of a holy being witnessing injustice inflicted upon the perfect one. The impact of the crucifixion shook the heavens, each hammer blow driving the nails through Jesus' hands and feet, echoed in the celestial realms like thunder made of sorrow. The seraphim, those angels who ceaselessly cry, "Holy, holy, holy," before God's throne, stopped singing. Their silence was not irreverent, but the result of such profound awe, sacred respect, and incomprehensible grief that their songs of praise were choked in their heavenly throats. Michael, still kneeling, gazed upon the scene with a mixture of anguish and dawning understanding. He, who had fought Lucifer's rebellion and knew the price of disobedience, now beheld the King of Glory, the author of life, being rejected and tortured by the very humanity he came to save. It was a staggering contradiction that shook his understanding of divine justice. Uriel, the angel of flame, felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Why would the Almighty allow such atrocity? Why must the legions of heaven, ready to obey any command, remain motionless while their Lord suffered?
In the silent language of angels, that question likely lingered in the air, a tension between loyalty and the desire to intervene. But then a revelation began to dawn within Michael, a truth that surpassed the logic of celestial warfare. It was not swords or armies at stake on that hill. It was something infinitely greater. He understood, or perhaps it was revealed to him directly, that his king was winning the ultimate battle, not through force that destroys, but through love that redeems. He was defeating hatred with forgiveness, darkness with his own sacrificial light. That understanding transformed powerlessness into deeper reverence. Uriel, restraining the fire of his being, prepared not for vengeance, but for a divine assignment soon to be entrusted to him, one that would record the sacrifice for all eternity. In the midst of the sacred silence and angelic reflection, a command was issued from the very throne of God. It was no human voice, but a clear, unmistakable heavenly decree, a mandate that vibrated across spiritual dimensions, instantly understood by every angelic being. Open the celestial books. Record everything. Every detail of this transcendent moment. What seemed like a tragedy on earth would be known in heaven as the judgment of the cross, the turning point of cosmic history. Uriel, the angel of flame and truth, received a scroll made of pure light, an eternal record. Upon it, he would begin to write, not with ink, but with the very essence of the sacrifice, the blood of the Lamb, the infinite love of God, and divine justice fulfilled. As Uriel began his sacred task, Michael, the warrior archangel, slowly spread his mighty wings, not to fight, but as an invisible cloak of comfort extended over the few faithful mourners at the foot of the cross. Mary, the mother of Jesus, the Apostle John, and the brave women. They could not see Michael, but perhaps they felt a strength and peace beyond understanding amid their immense sorrow. And then Michael, with a voice that echoed in the spiritual realm, made a solemn declaration. Every tear shed for the Son shall be an eternal memory, and every drop of his blood shall become an unshakable defense before the throne for all who believe. And as Jesus from the cross uttered his words of forgiveness, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing, all of heaven seemed to hold its breath, weeping in reverent silence, while Uriel recorded each syllable for eternity. As the hours passed on Golgotha, an unnatural darkness began to cover the earth. The sun, which had shone brightly, now hid its face, not as part of a natural cycle, but as if creation itself mourned, ashamed of the suffering inflicted upon its creator. In the invisible realm, the forces of darkness prematurely celebrated what they believed to be their victory. But Michael the archangel knew this apparent triumph was only an illusion. His eyes remained fixed on the cross where the real battle was being fought. Then, in a matchless act of worship and reverence, Michael bowed down, not before the heavenly throne as was his custom, but there, within the spiritual dimension surrounding Golgotha, before the crucified, bleeding, dying Son of God. With a voice trembling with emotion and reverence, he declared, "My Lord, you are conquering as no one has ever conquered." Meanwhile, Uriel, still holding his scroll of light, was moved to perform a profoundly symbolic act. He extended his fiery hand and with reverent touch, gathered a single drop of Christ's precious blood. That drop, upon contact with the angel's essence, was not consumed. It became a living flame, tiny but eternally burning, a testimony of the sacrifice Uriel would preserve at heaven's altar. At that very instant, while the redeeming blood was being honored in heaven, the great veil of the temple in Jerusalem, the curtain separating man from the holiest presence of God, was torn in two, from top to bottom. It was not the act of man. It was a divine declaration. The way to God was now open. The perfect sacrifice had been accepted. Michael and Uriel understood the magnitude of the moment. And from the cross, with a final breath that shook the foundations of creation, Jesus cried out with a voice weak on earth but thunderous in eternity, "It is finished." The plan was complete, the victory sealed. Michael lifted his sword, not for battle but in solemn salute to the victorious King. As Jesus gave up his spirit, the earth quaked and rocks split open. But in heaven, what appeared to be a tragedy was being revealed as the greatest triumph. As hell began to realize its colossal error, Michael felt a divine impulse beyond his warrior role. Moved by a love and compassion, reflecting those of the Father and the Son, Michael ascended to the throne of eternal majesty. There, in a bold and unprecedented act of angelic intercession, he pleaded, not for himself nor for heaven's armies, but for humanity. He begged that the precious blood shed on the cross not be in vain, that every soul for whom the Son died would be sought, reached, and restored. Heaven listened, and it is said that the Father's heart was moved by such a plea, affirming that prayers made in the name of the Son would carry special power and would be heard. Meanwhile, Uriel, the angel of flame, with that essence of Christ's blood still alive and burning within him, embarked on a silent but powerful mission across the earth. He traversed the invisible realm, and wherever his light touched, the darkness of despair retreated. It is said he began to mark the hearts of those destined for redemption, those who would one day respond to the call of the gospel. It was not a physical mark, but a spiritual imprint, a sign that they had been loved, purchased, and would be pursued by the Spirit of God. With Michael's intercession echoing in the heavens and Uriel's mission lighting beacons of hope on earth, the plan of redemption entered a new phase. Jesus' body was taken down from the cross and placed in a new tomb, and Michael, obeying a divine order, descended to guard that sacred place, not to keep Christ imprisoned by death, for he knew that was impossible, but to watch during the hours of waiting, anticipating the dawn of the glory to come.
Holy, holy, holy is the Lamb who was slain and now lives. With Christ resurrected, a new era dawned for humanity. Outside the empty tomb, in a garden bathed in morning light, Jesus prepared to reveal his victory. Michael and Uriel, invisible to human eyes, accompanied him, witnesses to every moment of this new beginning. It was Mary Magdalene, still mourning, who first arrived at the tomb and soon found the risen Lord. At first, she did not recognize him, but when Jesus called her by name, the veil of sorrow was lifted, and she exclaimed, "Rabboni," teacher. Uriel, the angel of flame, watched with emotion, recognizing in Mary the first earthly witness of the triumph over death. Michael, too, sensed the pulse of new creation beginning to spread through the world. Jesus commissioned Mary to take the news to his disciples, making her the first messenger of the resurrection. And so the testimony began to spread. Michael and Uriel knew this was only the beginning. Thousands and then millions through the centuries would carry this message of hope. The blood of the Son, vindicated by the resurrection, would speak louder than any sin, establishing a new relationship between God and mankind. After a time teaching his disciples and confirming his resurrection, the moment of the ascension came. From the Mount of Olives, Jesus was lifted into heaven, returning to the glory of the Father. Michael and Uriel, alongside armies of angels, formed the heavenly procession escorting the victorious King. The heavens opened, and angelic choirs proclaimed, "Make way for the King of glory." The Mighty One, the victor of the cross, he is the King of glory. Christ was enthroned at the right hand of the Father, and all heaven erupted in unprecedented worship, celebrating the completion of redemption. Uriel recorded in the eternal archives,
"Here eternal love was sealed. Here grace triumphed over judgment." With Christ enthroned in heaven, the mission of Michael and Uriel, though transformed, continued with fervor. Michael, the great protector, was appointed as the invisible guardian of the newborn church, defending believers from spiritual attack and strengthening martyrs in their testimony. Uriel, with his flame of divine truth, descended to inspire the apostles, ignite hearts with revelation, and help spread the understanding of the gospel throughout the world. Both archangels and all the hosts of heaven knew that Christ's victory on the cross and his resurrection had inaugurated a new age. But God's plan was not yet complete. One promise remained, echoing through every prophecy and in the heart of every believer. The King would return, and so heaven waits in eager anticipation for that final day. When the trumpet sounds and the heavens open once more, Michael will take his place at the head of the heavenly army, not as witness to suffering, but as the leader in the final consummation of victory. Uriel will raise the flame of truth, not as a record of the past, but as a beacon announcing the King's glorious return. Christ will descend, not as the humble lamb, but as the Lion of Judah, King of kings and Lord of lords, to judge the world and establish his eternal kingdom. And those who saw him suffer and those who believed in his name will rejoice. Michael and Uriel, the angels who knelt before the cross and celebrated the empty tomb, will be there, witnesses to the final triumph of love that changed everything.